2026 was supposed to be one of the best and most hype years for movie fans, because in every genre and for every type of audience, there were a ton of cool flicks lined up to hit theaters. Innings Heights, Scream, Mario, Project Hill, Mary, Mortal Kombat, The Mandalorian and Grogu, Master of the Universe, Supergirl, Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, Avengers, Doomsday, and Dune Part 2. When you've got this many huge blockbusters with all those superstars, crazy budgets, and massive ads all releasing in a single year, you wouldn't expect the small indie movies to even do decent, let alone actually blow up and become huge hits. But over the past few weeks, something happened that totally flipped the script. Two completely unknown movies just popped out of nowhere and managed to break a ton of Hollywood records. Obsession and Backrooms, made by two Gen Z YouTubers, are packing movie theaters to the brim at every single screening, and each one has already made over $200 million, earning back tens or even hundreds of times what they cost to make, straight up humiliating Hollywood's flashy but hollow blockbusters. But seriously, how is it even possible that two young people, in their very first feature film, without any formal film school education, or big studios and major names backing them, could create stuff that connects with audiences this much? In this video, we're going to talk about exactly that. So stick with Movie Club. The story of YouTubers making feature films goes back to 2022, when two Aussie brothers, Danny and Michael Philippou, decided instead of just making action comedy skits for their YouTube channel, they'd make a full-on cinematic movie. The result was Talk to Me, one of the most acclaimed movies of 2023, which not only grabbed the general audience's attention, but also kept the critics happy, to the point where Peter Jackson himself said after watching it that it was one of the best horror flicks he'd seen in years. So, a movie made with a budget of less than $4 million ended up raking in $92 million worldwide. Meanwhile, one of the biggest gaming YouTubers, Markiplier, announced he wanted to make a movie based on a game he'd recently played. That movie was Iron Lung. Unlike the last example, no studio was willing to take on making this film, so Mark decided to just make it entirely by himself, and I mean literally by himself. He wrote, directed, starred in, produced, and even edited a 2-hour sci-fi horror movie, all out of his own pocket. But when the project was finished, Hollywood distributors wouldn't agree to release it. So he personally went out and cut deals with movie theaters himself, just to finally get it on the big screen. Eventually, a movie made by a YouTuber ended up playing in over 300 theaters across America earlier this year, and a film he'd spent about $3 million of his own money on went on to make $50 million. And finally, we get to the movie made by a 26-year-old YouTuber named Chris Bucker. This dude's only experience over the last few years was just making a bunch of comedy and horror skits for his YouTube and TikTok channels. But with his first shot at a feature film, he didn't just take over Hollywood. He took over all of social media. I know it might be hard to believe, but Chris Bucker shot Obsession in just 20 days, on a budget of only $75,000. He busted his butt to get his film into the Toronto International Film Festival, and after Obsession screened, it got so much praise that several studios quickly hit Chris up to handle the distribution and release. As a result, Obsession hit theaters and turned into a full-blown cinematic phenomenon. This was a movie with zero big names or stars attached to it. A movie where both the director and the cast were experiencing a project of this scale for the very first time. It managed to score the highest ratings from both audiences and critics, and so far it's made nearly $25 million. That's about 320 times the amount spent on making it. On top of that, Obsession managed to pull off a historic record
that hasn't happened in 44 years during its second and third weekends. Its box office didn't just not drop. It actually grew significantly.
The last time something like that happened in Hollywood was back in 1982, when E.T. was in theaters. The crazy thing about all this is that Obsession hit these wild numbers while a bunch of other huge blockbusters with massive stars were playing at the exact same time. Just for a quick comparison, The Mandalorian and Grogu had a production and marketing budget of $300 million and took 7 years to make. And what did it achieve? The worst opening weekend in Star Wars franchise history. It still hasn't even broken even yet, let alone turned a profit. But the records of a 26-year-old YouTuber in Hollywood weren't enough because another YouTuber released his movie around the same time. Except this guy is only 20 years old. Kane Parsons, the writer and director of one of the buzziest movies right now, Backrooms. Kane's journey started 4 years ago when he was just 16. He decided to take an internet legend called the Backrooms, which at the time was just a few creepy photos, and use computer software to create a found footage style video. After posting it to his YouTube channel, he racked up millions of views super fast, and today that video has over 85 million views on YouTube. That video Kane made just from getting inspired by a few photos gradually turned into a terrifying and insanely popular parallel universe for fans. That massive level of attention drew in a big movie studio like A24 to reach out to Kane. When they saw his potential and talent, they didn't hesitate, no Hollywood BS, and handed him a $10 million budget, asking him for just one thing, make a full-length Backrooms movie. After about a year, the film dropped on May 29, 2026, and it literally blew the roofs off theaters, pulling in a mind-blowing $81 million in its opening weekend. That made it the biggest opening ever for A24, and the fourth biggest opening in the entire history of the horror genre. As of today, this movie has made over $240 million worldwide, earning 24 times its budget. You could say Talk to Me just got lucky. You could say Iron Lung only got noticed because its creator has 38 million subscribers. You could say that one viral clip from Obsession is why it broke records. And you could say Backrooms was already popular, so of course the movie did well. But here's the thing you absolutely cannot justify or ignore. All four of these films, especially the last two, made history. Not because they're technically flawless or narratively mind-blowing, but because they're the start of something completely unprecedented in Hollywood. For years, the top dogs in Hollywood were the big studios, the famous directors, and the superstar actors. But now, the game has changed. Hollywood's factory of multi-million-dollar garbage just can't operate like it used to. It can't look down on the audience like they're clueless peasants and feed them soulless, low-quality junk like it's some kind of favor. It's not enough anymore for them to just milk a popular IP dry and rely on nostalgia bait to drag people into theaters. And most importantly, they can't ignore the audience, and especially Gen Z talent, anymore, because when they do, you get two films like Obsession and Backrooms made by two inexperienced YouTubers showing up and making a complete joke out of multi-$100 million films. And honestly, at the very least, that gives me a lot of hope. The fact that a huge chunk of this major shift is being driven by YouTubers, people who know the audience better than any production company ever could, people who come from the exact same community as the general audience, along with their ideas, people who don't have to chase those weird modern Hollywood ideologies, and whose mindset isn't dictated by a rotten system that's too scared to take risks or value creativity. That is the real reason stuff like Obsession and Backrooms are winning. So, what do you think? Do you think this rivalry between indie newcomers and the Hollywood giants can actually make a real impact and change Hollywood's direction? Make sure to drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Movie Club.
Thanks for hanging out with me!